So the first thing, we definitely want to talk some business. You know, through this weekend, we didn't get to talk a lot of business for trainers. And so let's just start with this. What is like one thing that you find helps you have a successful business? And we'll start with Tim.
Anybody that really knows me, I'm just big on relationships. You know what I mean? I had referenced this, I think, a little bit yesterday, but when we look at what currency is, right, we all think about making money, you know, but for me, it's more about relationships. Relationships is going to get you in doors that money can't. And so over the years, throughout the 16 years I've been doing this, investing in people, you always get a good return of investment on that. So when you're talking about impacting kids, impacting coaches, I think relationships is going to be an extension of your network, right? So you always hear the cliche, your network is your net worth. And for me, being able to pick up a phone, maybe call you and saying, yo, E, I need to get a gym in New York. I got a client coming in. Or, you know, hey, I'm in Belgium, I need a gym, or in Hong Kong. You know, having an extension of who you are and aligning yourself with people that share a similar vision, I think is imperative to not just your own personal development, but your growth. And that could lead into financial gains. So I would say relationships is something that I hang my hat on.
Yeah, I think I'm going to build on it. I agree 100% with the relationships, and I think you're in year 16, you're in year, I don't know, also like over 10, yes. 20? Yes. Yeah, I'm in year 15, so I think the difference between, you see a lot of people like trying to do something in this business, and a lot of people think about money first or about ego first, and those people never last. I think it's always about giving value first, and then the money is going to come if you give value. So I think that's one, and I think the second thing that I learned is, we talked about it yesterday, is diversity brings immunity. So if you can have multiple income streams, that's gonna help you. Like if you're only doing personal training, then if you lose 2 clients in a week, that's going to hurt you. You're always going to be stressed. You're on vacation, you're not making any money. But I think all of us, we all have multiple things going on. And I think that, yeah, you feel way more relaxed. If one thing goes bad, maybe the other thing goes really good that week or that month. So I think it's about thinking bigger than just training players.
Yeah, I think Tim hit the nail on the head. Everything comes from people. And for me, I try and pride myself off of giving more value than I ask for. So that's the big thing for me. And there's a really good book on this, and it's called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And I think everybody should read this book. And Keith in this book talks about never keep score, right? So if Yura comes to Hong Kong, or Tim comes to Hong Kong, ever comes to Hong Kong, I'm paying for everything. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I go out of my way to make them feel super welcome. And if I then go, I don't know, to Atlanta or someone, and someone doesn't really take care of me, I'm not really sweating that. That's not, it's not about that for me. So really not keeping score. The second thing is, for business, right, is to be the best that you can be. And Evan said this quote yesterday, is the same thing, is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And I pride everybody in our company and our coaches, like, before we outplay the other team, let's outcare the other team. And it starts with the coaching staff. And it starts with the second, in terms of business, the second the player, the parent, whoever walks in the door, do they feel loved? Do they feel welcome? Do they feel appreciated? Do they feel gratitude? These are all what we might say is small things that make all the difference. And then if you are a trainer or a coach, more than likely you're allergic to numbers. I'm just kidding. But more than likely you love coaching so much that you don't look at the balance sheet. And this is something that I had to learn looking at reading a financial statement and all that kind of stuff. It's a part of life, right? It's a part of everyday life, whether you're a trainer or not. That's going to be something that you have to do, right? And so tapping into that slowly, but understanding the importance of that is also paramount.
Yeah, really good stuff there. You know, just to chime in as well, my number one thing that I've just been obsessed with is standard operating procedures. So, like, even after this experience, it's not like experience over, off to the next thing. It's like, okay, throughout this next week, analyzing what went well, what didn't go well, and building out a system and an engine for next year. And even too with like academy training sessions, like, you know, people just run training academy sessions, but what are your standard operating procedures that you do every single day? So it's like, how do you open up the gym? How do you organize the gym? Do you have music on? Do you start with the huddle? What does your workout structure kind of look like? Are you interacting with parents after? And there's all of those just mini standard operating procedures. You know, with an academy, an event, a camp, I've just been obsessed about those. And I love just picking brains from other people just to build those. But really good stuff here. And we'll kind of spend, you know, a couple more minutes as well. We could free flow. If you, like, there's a lot of players here that are aspiring to be trainers. We also have some trainers here that are in year 1, year 2, but we also have guys that have been in the industry. During your process, you face a ton of adversity. What helps you push through that adversity? And we could have an open mic here. Yeah. So it's an open question here of, like, for example, right? Starting out when I was training, like, financials and finding gyms was a major hurdle. And so what helped me push through that was seeing the future and saying, you know what, like, the vision of New York City Hoop School, it's gonna work out. When you face adversity, so for example, Will, you're in Hong Kong and you've got all those hurdles, what helps you push through that adversity? Same thing with Yerrick and Tim.
I think that every adversity presents an opportunity, opens the door for an opportunity. And it's our intelligence and our open-mindedness to see what that opportunity actually is. Right? And you'll very quickly sometimes make up that opportunity, right? And you make it up in your head so it becomes to fruition. But I think a lot of the times when you're working through adversity, again, it's what is the opportunity that comes out of this adversity, because I was talking to one of the players, without any adversity, you're going to go. There's just zero opportunity, zero chance that it happens. So it's not that you're avoiding conflict, that you're avoiding struggle. It's actually, usually for growth, you have to walk towards those, whether it's physically painful for players or for business owners or just emotionally painful situations where we have to maybe, have crucial conversations with the staff and that is not performing to the standard, right? How are we going to have that conversation? How are we going to end this conversation with a better relationship than this time? Because it is possible. That is possible, right? And those are the we can talk about that more in a bit. But if you're an aspiring trainer, especially an aspiring business owner, aspiring head coach, you're going to have a lot of hurdles, a lot of conflicts, and you're going to have a lot of hard discussions with even especially parents, right? You have a lot of hard discussions with your kids and or your players about being the best that they can be.
Really good. Does anybody else want to chime in there?
Yeah, maybe just building, I think also it's a mindset thing. Like, for example, that you can be sure that something not going wrong and I'm going where you want to be like, oh man, why me and why is this happening and he's doing this and he's doing that. But I think for me, like, what I learned is solutions for problems. So instead of putting your energy into something that's gonna put you down, you need to think like, okay, what's something that I can control? What is something that I can really do now to fix the situation and get better at it? So I think it's also a mindset switch that we have.
I love that.
I just to attest on what they just said. It's crazy, man. I'm about to be, I'm about to be 38 tomorrow. So one of the
Happy birthday, Tim.
one of the truths that I've learned in my life, with all my hardships, going from being homeless to going to 11 schools in 12 years, just all the hardships that I've had to endure, is that there's power in having optimism. Being able to look at a situation from multiple perspectives, from two different ways. I always say there's at least two different ways to look at a situation. So, that's why my foundation is called The Beautiful Struggle, because it's our job as human beings to find beauty in your struggle. You know what I mean? And you have the ability to be able to look at your situation and find the good in terms of the lessons that we was talking about earlier. Finding, what did I learn from this situation? you know, and being able to extract that information and being able to grow and continuously progress, I think that's the essence of why we even here on this earth. You know, I know a lot of us, we endure hardships, but the one thing that I've really learned is that we're here on this earth for spiritual growth. You know what I mean? So there's no way around it. I've never met anybody that just had a linear life where they started here and just went up and up and up. Regardless of the industry that you're in, regardless of the parent that you are or whatever, if you look at the resume of some of the most successful people in this world, they've had probably way more failures in their life as opposed to those small levels of success. So I think optimism is something that allows me to understand that, you know, it too shall pass. We've heard that maybe from a few sound bites on social media and stuff, but it's very true, man. Like, your situation is always temporary. Because I say this to a lot of my mentees and parents or kids or whatever, but regardless of all the bad stuff that's ever happened into your life, right? Whether you dealt with suicide, whether you dealt with losing a child, whatever the situation is, and it may be horrific, you may not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but when has it never worked out? You've always learned from it, you've always grown from a hardship situation, and I think that just makes us who we are as individuals today, and that allows you to kind of find ways to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
I love that. Yeah. Let's shift gears here. Let's start now talking, you know, more towards the players. My number one thing for players is they don't have a plan, they're not organized, and it's almost like they're placing those dot points everywhere. They're not connecting those dots. They're not going down the same path. And we had a great conversation last night where there's a million ways to do things to achieve your goals, right? There's so many different styles of training, and they all ultimately can lead to success for the athlete. What advice would you have for players now that have goals to get a scholarship or become a professional basketball player? What would be your guidance for them? And we can make sure we pass this mic here.
I think one, it starts with habits. I think for me, I always talk about what I call the 1% club. And for me, the 1% club is like the people thing, like business, players, whatever. I think the biggest difference between them and the 99% club is consistency. Like, we all have dreams, we all want to achieve something, we all have our goals, but 99% cannot be consistent. So I think is if you can make the right habits, like for me, the thing that changed my life was Kaizen. This comes from Japan. It means like daily continuous improvement. Like, I learned that when I was 19, when I started in this business and didn't know anything about coaching. But I stayed consistent, and every day I do at least something that makes me better as a person, as a coach, or my business better. And I did that consistently for over 15 years now. And I think that's the reason why I am right now where I am. And I think it's the same for players. If I look at the best pro players that I work with, maybe some of them, like, I got a guy right now, for example, he's the assist leader in EuroLeague. And when I trained him, we started 14 years ago, and he was depressed in Belgium, coming off a year in college where he broke his foot, didn't play a senior year, didn't have any offers, came to Belgium to make like 1.5K a month on the worst team. But he stayed consistent, and now he's like, it's almost 14 years later, and now he's at the top of his career. So he had to wait a long time for that breakthrough, but he stayed consistent. And I think a lot of the times it's not the most talented players who make it, but it's the guys who work the hardest and who stay true to their habits.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. For me, the word that I would say for players, especially young players, I didn't do this, so I hope you guys are better than me, is having crystal clear clarity on your goals. And so Evan mentioned X plus Y, and by...
I will accomplish X by Y.
Okay, like, that's great. And then to go off my presentation for you guys who were here yesterday on periodization or planning, is the clearer that you can make and vivid that you can make your goals, the more likely you are to achieve them. Like, have you guys planned a year out? Have you guys planned even a month out or a week out? Like, do you guys know what you're doing tomorrow at 2? Like, having these, like, I have journals and I have diaries, and I literally have 40 of them at home. Or I just have books, and I don't throw them away because I want to see what I was doing 2 years ago, right? And so I want to see my growth from then. So being crystal clear on that. I will have a disclaimer by saying that whatever long-term plan you have, get ready to adjust that, right? Because your plan is not going to work immediately. Like, I have plans for myself a year out. Like, I'm going to have to make a lot of adjustments on the way. But I gave a quick snippet of what I believe skill is. And for me, skill and adaptability are basically the same thing. Meaning that skill on the court is not about how good does my jump shot look. No one cares. Like, I care that that thing goes in that hoop, right? It doesn't matter if Uric is guarding me, Evan is guarding me, Tim is guarding me, or LeBron or Wemby is guarding me. I'm gonna get the same result every single time, because out of all those 5 players, my shot is gonna look different every single time. So, sorry, to come back to that, having crystal clear clarity on what you guys want, when you guys want it, but then being able to adapt, which is basically Kaizen, and being able to continue on. Because just because you fail once doesn't mean that you are a failure. So Evan just mentioned identity. Having the self-identity, and this is another huge book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And if I had to pick one book, I know I threw out a lot of books, one book, okay, this is even more important than the coaching book I mentioned. It's by Carol Dweck, Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford, talking about a fixed mindset versus, a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And basically, it says that the person who has a growth mindset does not measure themselves by the result. Rather, they measure themselves by how much they have grown, right? So say, for example, Uric and I are, we're PlayStation characters in NBA 2K. And Uric starts off at 6 and I start off at 4, right? And Uric ends off at, he has a skill level of 7, but I started off at 4, but I ended up at 6.5. Uric is still better than me, but I feel like that's massive success because I've grown so much myself. So having an identity of someone who has a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset is key. Sorry, so that's a lot there, but.
Nah, and to piggyback off that too, I would definitely, well, I guess 2 things. One, you got to reverse engineer your life, right? So where do I want to end up, right? What's the end game look like in my life? Whether it's, hey, do I want to play in college? Do I want to play in the NBA? Just whatever you think you want to end up as, right? And then just kind of starting on where you're at, right? And going back to your point, like what's the game plan like? And along that journey, you're going to know that you're going to have to pivot. You know, just like you just said earlier, the adjustment game is extremely important, I think, in anything that we do because, you know, life happens, right? And that knocks us off track. So I think you have to, again, be able to know where you're going because it's weird. Like, I get a lot of people, especially a lot of players, they'll ask me, Coach, how do I make it to the NBA? I was like, well, first, do you even want to go to the NBA? You know, and if you want to go to the NBA, we got to be more specific with that, right? Because that, to me, is kind of very vague. It's like if you go to a Chick-fil-A drive-thru, right, and you go in and you just say, hey, I want some food. They're going to give you some food, but it's probably going to be something you didn't really want. So when we learn how to specify what we want and get clear in terms of, hey, I don't want just food. I want, you know, a number 1 with cheese and a diet lemonade. You're going to get exactly what you want out of this world when you learn how to specify your goals and what you want to extract from this universe. And then I think the second thing that's really helped me just get to where I'm at today is just surrounding myself with people that are going to hold me accountable. I don't like yes men. I don't even like people telling me how great I am because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Because I'm always, to your point, the growth mindset, that's where I remember when I first started, I looked at all these trainers and I was like, man, I want to be like that, or I want to do what he does. And then now some of those guys you don't even hear about no more. So when you talk about longevity and what's going to keep me in this business over time, one, I know where I want to end up. I know that within the next 3 years, I want a ranch, 100 acres. I want, you know, at least 6 tiny homes on there. I want a nice gym where the facility is going to be like in a greenhouse aspect with a nice botanical garden on the inside, to where when you walk into the gym, you see like some big trees and plants everywhere, and to where it's something that it's just an exquisite type of piece. So that's my vision, that's my end game. And from where I'm at right now, it's like, okay, who do I need to talk to in terms of my network? Who do I need to start surrounding myself with that's going to hold me accountable? And if I just continue with the optimism and just keep working at it every day, being consistent and just living through these principles, I'm going to get what I want 100% of the time. So I think it's with everybody up here on this panel discussed, these are all truths that I think we've all had to grow through to really learn from.
I love that. And just to highlight a point here, recognize how they all have a very clear vision and goals, and they know exactly what they want. And connecting that back to the player, like, it's not just, I'm going to be an NBA player. It's re-engineering that from backwards, and it's saying, this is exactly what I want, this is exactly the path that I'm going towards, and it's being able to pivot, as you mentioned. And the number one thing I'm learning is, like, strategy, strategic thinking. It's not just being reactionary, saying, yeah, I'm going to just run this academy, and then, yeah, maybe I'll do this event. It's, are we planning a year in advance, 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance? I love how you're highlighting all these books. I'm going to highlight an entrepreneur here, Patrick Bet-David, and he says, what's your next 15 moves? Like, your next 15 moves. So, for example, like, this conference, right, is like a move. What's the next move after that, and after that, and after that? And then if you have an end goal, that helps you, re-engineer that goal. The next thing I'd love to highlight, too, is, Tim, you taught me this. Your network is your net worth. And a major thing for players, and then we'll shift gears, towards the parents here, is, are you setting yourself up for success for the future? So, like, are you starting the relationships you need to achieve your goals? Or are you also associating yourselves with kids that are not helping you get towards your goals? Maybe they're doing the wrong things. You're not around the same circle. Like, for me, when I was in high school, I made sure to surround myself around all the hoopers, right? If guys are doing all these wrong things, I'm going against God. I want to put myself in a circle where they're all trying to get a Division I scholarship. Why? Because iron sharpens iron. And I didn't get a chance to share this story. Is Brian here? I saw Brian. Brian Dominguez right here. Brian and I used to, so that was my guy. Brian is a trainer now at T3 Performance, and we would work out on this side of the gym every morning at 6 a.m., and he was my workout partner, right? And I would wake up in the morning and I would say, I'm tired today, but Brian's in the gym, I gotta be there. So I found a partner. So it's associating yourselves around the right people. And then I realized that, like, in high school I had my adversities, but when I started learning from guys like you guys, like Drew Hanlon, and all these mentors, everything changed. So it's finding the data, it's strategically thinking through it, and then building from there. But let's take these next 7 minutes here. We'll talk, some advice for parents in guiding their athletes to reach their full potential, and then we'll open it up for a 10-minute Q&A. Sounds good? So we'll kind of open the floor here. Not a specific question, but would you want to, share anything to the parents that you believe in and can help their, child reach their full potential?
So I mentioned yesterday that I run a nonprofit organization for talented, many times underprivileged girls from Hong Kong to use basketball as a vehicle to further education. And for the parents, I would say that you guys are probably the most important part of the whole picture, and that what you say means more to them than what any of us can say. And I'm going to look at it from a coaching perspective because and I know if I feel this way, then a lot of other college programs or whatever programs you're trying to get into will also feel this way. If I'm looking at a player and I'm very, very interested in this player, the first thing I'm looking at after they check the boxes of, okay, they're a good teammate, they have the skills, the first thing I'm looking at is their parents. And if I feel like this parent is going to be someone who is constantly hassling me, or they're going to be coaching from the sideline, or that makes me want to take that kid a little bit less. Or if, no, not just coaching from the sideline, or if they're not encouraging their kid, like, there's only one reason you need to be there, and it's supposed to be to make your son or daughter feel supported. Like, that's my perspective, right? The reason that I do what I do and we do what we do is to make a difference in this child's life. And I feel like, and this is universal, right? Parents love their kids so much that they don't want to see them fail. But we just talked about the growth mindset and struggle. They have to. I've failed countless times. Like the most successful people, MJ did an ad about how many times he's failed, right? We have to give them that, I want to even say privilege of struggle, the beautiful struggle, right? And so for parents, I would say, number one, is my child playing basketball or whatever they're doing because they love it, or is it because they want to please me? And this is something that I'm very aware that when I have kids, I'm gonna have to like step back and really look at this and really like make sure that they're in it for the right reasons. Is number two, am I holding them accountable because they want to be the best that they can be, not because they expect something of me? And number three, am I being as loving and as supportive as I can? Like you mentioned your dad, like you would, the situation where you go 0 for 10, but you stole that one. And he would emphasize that steal. See, that's exactly what it's all about, right? That's exactly what it's all about. So I would say, like to end this is like, are we doing those things? Are we making our child feel loved because they are them rather than because they're a good basketball player? I think that's huge.
Yeah. I think you said already most of the part. That was very good. I think how I can build on it is what we do in the academy is what I learned over the years is when we recruit kids, I got a full questionnaire of like 5 pages for parents. Why? Because the parent is more important than the kid. And we do also, after the questionnaire, I already look for some red flags. But if the questionnaire is still okay, then we still have a parent interview just with the parent. And I think that's very important because I feel like I've seen relationships go broke so many times with what we call the term is like trophy parents. And like trophy parents most of the time are like the parent did sport and never made it, and he kind of like their unfinished dreams they project on their kids. And I see that, I get emotional right now because I think about some guys in my academy where I've seen it go like that. And give me 1 second. Like what I see is the relationship between the parent and the kid just goes so toxic because when the kid plays great, the parent give love to the kid, and if the kid plays trash, like all the body language of the parent, like parents go out during games or like you see the body language like what? You missed that shot, or like everything like that. And when you see, you can see it all the time, like kids, when they miss a shot, the first thing they look at is, how is my dad or my mom reacting? And I think that's so sad. And like, for example, I had a message 2 days ago from a parent, and he said, how is my kid doing? Like, is he happy? But the kid still lives at home. But the relationships is so toxic that he has to ask the coach if the kid is happy.
Can I ask that?
Yeah.
Is really going to be a parent, you're going to be a coach.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of people, they decide to be a coach for the parent, even though they don't have all the knowledge and all the right recipe, and then they do their job at it. And I see all the time in games too, where the parents, as we allude to, are almost like TV after TV, and the people look at. So they take a shot, they look at the stands. They take a shot, they lose it. They take a turnover, they look at the stands. What are the stands for? You're in the flow of the game. And I think you understand as well as a parent, like, it is so hard, especially for the crowd, to play through all this adversity, to have on top of that they got to worry about your reaction. That's really hard for the athlete. That's a lot of pressure. And I think just keeping your positioning as an anchor point, and not so much to criticize them, but as an anchor point. Now, I would do this again too, and my uncle was here today. My uncle would come to all my college basketball games, and with all the chaos and the curveball that happened this season, he was an anchor point for me. And all he did was 100% support me. And to me, I was like, hey, I needed that. And I think all parents should have that, right?
Yeah, and just to build on it, it's kind of like we got to be realistic. We know that less than 1% of the kids is going to make it to the pros. And if you look at the pros, how many of the pros are literally having a long career, are literally being able to play minutes? And how many of the pros are truly happy? that's also still a very small percentage. It's not like making it to the pros like now my life is set, you know. It's still a very tough world, and I think for me, like, basketball is a toolbox, but it's not, in the end, it's not about basketball. You know, it's like what basketball can bring in life for you. And I think a lot of parents need to see that, like, they're so projected, and my kid needs to become a pro, otherwise he's a failure, you know, and that brings so much pressure to the kids, and you're just missing probably the most important years of your life, and when your kid is still with you and you project your dreams on it, like, I don't get that. Like, I have now a little son, and I hope I will never be like that. Like, I think that's the worst thing you can do as a parent, so, yeah.
Yeah, man, I think those are all great answers. And, you know, so for me, it's kind of like a full circle moment. So I have my son, he's 13 years old. And now with my daughter on the way, it's kind of like I'm having to start all over. And when you have a child, especially at a young age, shoot, I forgot how old I was, but like 23 at the time, 23, 24, I didn't even know who I was, you know. And so especially when you're having a child and you're sleeping in the backseat of a car, you're going through these hardships, you're just trying to find a way to provide, that not only is a struggle, but then you're trying to learn how to become a parent. And when you talk about reference points, like I didn't meet my father until I was 18. So I didn't even know what he looked like, anything. And when you don't have a great home foundation, so to speak, you're just kind of just winging it every day. You're just trying to do the best you can, what you think is right. And as a parent, it gets hard because I think we look at our children as they're an extension of us, right? But they are in a way, but they're really not. They're their own person. You know what I mean? And it's our job to guide them to become better than us. And I think when you see a lot of these kids that are on teams and the parents are having these high expectations or high standards, I think we lose sight of the bigger picture. You know, it's not even about making it to the NBA or even going to college, but I got to remind myself when I talk to my son is if I was to, knock on wood, pass away tomorrow, would he be able to survive in this crazy world that we're living in today? Does he have a compass in his spirit that if he's in a bad situation, does he know how to navigate through that and be able to kind of get back on course and be able to navigate through some of the hardships that he's going to endure and experience? And I think sports is an unbelievable way to really develop life lessons, to teach our kids about discipline and sacrifice and working with others. And that's the importance of why they play in sports, because I know for a lot of us parents, the things that we've had to go through and endure, our kids don't have to. You know what I mean? So I think we just lose sight of what their life is. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all this exposure to all this information at an early age. So the conversations that I was having when I was 13 years old, you know, my mind would wander. I would have an imagination. I would think about things differently than what my son does. Now I'm talking to him like he's a grown man because of what he's exposed to in his little world, in his society. So I think ultimately, man, we have a small window to impact our children in ways that we may tend to overlook. And I think just creating a spiritual foundation for your child is probably the most important thing, and helping them and guiding them to find their own identity, you know, because I know for my son it's kind of difficult for him because every time he walks into a gym, everybody's just saying, oh, did you get to train with this NBA player this summer or whatever? And it's like he's never kind of good enough. So right now we're having to work through his self-esteem and building his confidence. And you know, as a teenager, his hormones are changing and stuff like that. So again, going back to your support system, asking other parents, hey, what are you doing with your son? You know, because it takes a village. It really does. And so the point that I'm trying to make is I think it's important to use the game of basketball to teach the life lessons and hone in more so on that as opposed to if they're having success, you know, dropping 20 points a game or not.
And I'll take these last 26 seconds here to just share 5 quick tools. And if you're a parent, I think this is the writer downer. It's number 1, I believe in you. giving them the confidence. 2, I love you. Whether you go 0 for 10 or 10 for 10, I still love you. 3, doing everything they need to reach their full potential. Like, my family supported me with this conference, right? It's saying, okay, what do you need? You want me to make you breakfast? I got you. What do you need after the game? I'll help you fuel up. 4th thing, it's, okay, I will find the whole network that you need, and I'll put them together and put you in a position to be successful. And 5, it's saying, I'm going to educate myself, and then now I can deliver more to my child. With that education, now you could give all the data you need to the player, which is your child, and then you could put them in a position to be successful. But really good stuff, guys. Let's open it up for Q&A here, and we can extend the time if we need to. Dimitri.
So I'm so confident to take this because I have an AAU team that flies from China to come and play in Kentucky and Chicago, and no one has ever heard of us. So now I can't speak for the most part, but we do our best, you know, to give our girls the exposure they deserve. And we only bring, well, because of cost as well, we only bring 9 players. Right? But all those 9 players are going to get significant playing time. Because at the end of the day, for me, it's not about beating the other team. It's that my girls get seen by the right people. And, you know, I'll make phone calls before I come to the States and have people watching the game and everything. But for me, at least from a Hong Kong perspective, it's more of a cultural, educational experience more than winning everything. That's the biggest thing for me. That being said, where we are, there's not a whole lot of competition. So we were in Chicago and Kentucky for 3 weeks, and we played just a ridiculous amount of games. And I wouldn't want to have played any more games than that, right? But for the most part, I feel like it shouldn't be done like that. The workload of games, the load of games shouldn't be done all year round. That's just not healthy for the body and everything. But I think that it's a good opportunity for them to get a lot better. Again, going back to the parenting and all that kind of stuff, it's not good or bad. It's just how do we frame what is going on? Because when you go to those AAU games, there's some ridiculousness that goes on in the crowd. And I feel like, to go back to your question, I mean, we had a girl go Division I, right? That's pretty good. And she comes from Hong Kong. And now that, I have a lot of help on the other end, but caring before anything, like out-caring the other team rather than just outplaying the other team, and getting her the opportunities to be seen by colleges has worked out pretty well for us, right? And I'm not saying that if you were on an EYBL team that wouldn't help significantly, probably would, but we've been able to do it with a very small budget from a team on the other end of the world that most people haven't even heard of the city that we're from. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it just don't make sense. Because I used to be a head coach for Mo Williams' 17U EYBL team. And there was a few players I just said, man, go play for somebody else so you could get minutes and get that exposure. And to attest off what he just said, like, I think it's not even about the AAU team, it's what tournaments are they competing in? Like you said, for the exposure side. And the way the NIL structure has changed, or the transfer portal is changed, the dynamic of how kids are recruited, not just here in the States, but from an international standpoint. There's so many exposure camps or events that you could go to get your name out there and to be seen and find the right fit. So everybody's going to have a different path. I mean, if you look at the majority of even all the guys that are considered the superstars in the NBA, none of them were really from a blue chip college. I mean, you look at Steph Curry went to Davidson, Paul George, Fresno State. The list kind of goes on and on. So I think how you get to where you're trying to go just kind of goes back to you got to do what's best for you. the whole playing for the name in the front, I mean, it's just not what it used to be, where you have one AAU program for all 3 or 4 summers. You're probably going to end up on a different team each summer. So you got to look at the schedule. I think that's the most important thing. So for all you parents with the kids out there, look at the tournaments. That's going to give them the best chance, not just to be on the court, but to be seen.
And we'll extend this here for about 10 minutes. Any other questions? Yes. We've got to connect that triangle where it's the coach, the parent, and the athlete, or not even just the coach, but also the trainer, like creating that triangle. And if you feel like that coach or trainer isn't doing the right job, you can always find a different one. You can always find a different program and a different, people that you can trust. So I would just like to throw that in there here.
Yeah, I feel you, because especially when you're dealing with young boys, sometimes they can be hard-headed. I definitely get it. And so I think as a trainer, as a coach, like you said about that triangle, I think it's important to have communication in the beginning. So before we even get into the meat of the season or anything, before we start our practices and stuff like that, we need to be able to have some dialogue. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to ask you, okay, what do you want for your son this summer? What are some of your expectations? What are the conversations you're having at home, so I could also echo that? You know what I mean? So I think if we have that agreement and understanding from the beginning, not in the middle of the season, because as a coach, I'm trying to win games. I got all these personalities I got to manage, and then I got my own personal life I got to manage. But if I could have just a brief conversation with you, and then throughout the season, after the tournaments, we have feedback. Let's talk about our adjustments. Hey, I need him to do this at home, or I need him to do this in practice. And then now we're working collectively as a team, as opposed to I'm just assuming what you want and you're assuming what I'm trying to do. Because I think the lack of communication between parents and coaches is what's the primary issue on what we're dealing with today. And, for parents, like you said, you're trying to get your son to be tough, because you know what this world is about to do and expose him to when he leaves your house. So I think it's a collective effort, but having those conversations before you get into the meat of that season is imperative.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the main thing is having an upfront conversation about what is expected on the team. And Evan has his standards and what he wants his organization to look like. And every organization, every team is going to have their own standards of what they expect from the parents, what they expect from the players. And I mean, at the same time, not every program may be right for that particular parent, and it's a matter of having a dialogue. It's a matter of having a conversation to see if it is the right fit. And if it is, then great. And if it's not, that they can look elsewhere. But I think, like Tim said, what's very important is that to have an upfront conversation about what is going to happen during the season, what is expected. I do think that there is everybody's definition of toughness may be a little bit different, because I feel like there's no team that doesn't want tough kids, right? But the way that you get to that player may be different, in terms of how do you motivate this person to be tough, well, maybe if I'm just hard on him the whole time, well, that may not be the way for certain players. It may be the way for certain other players, but as a coach, this is the art of coaching, where you kind of have to really find out what hits home with this particular person in order for them to be the best that they can be. That's what I would say.
You know, we also gotta define tough, right? So like, for example, you know, some kids, like, let's say there's like an interaction that happens on the court, and then they decide to try to hit the kid. They think that's being tough, but in my opinion, that's not being smart. We gotta define tough, right? It's like, what is the definition of tough? Like, being tough to me is fighting through adversity. Being tough is, you know, you lost your spot and you're fighting your way back. Being tough is, you know, dealing with all this struggle and having still a long-term perspective and pounding away at the rock. I think we just, before we talk about toughness, we gotta define toughness. But I agree that coaches definitely need to be teaching that toughness both on the court and in life. And I would love to reinforce, you know, the New York City Hoop School vision here is, you know, we're not the end-all be-all of what we're trying to put together, right? We need to continue to learn. We need to continue to collaborate with people. We need to continue to gather the data. But the whole vision of New York City Hoop School is to certify coaches so that we could just take the standard from here to here. And I believe that that will have such an amazing ripple effect on the industry and can help fix a lot of these problems that we have in New York City. Any other questions? Yes. Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I think one of the things, I'll just call it what it is. If you're not playing on a team, it's because your coach don't trust you. You know, I think if I'm a coach, I know when I did coach, I played players that I trusted. You know, I had some kind of like going into the practices. I knew which kid was either going to respond or react when they made a mistake. Because this is not. I've never had a player that I've worked with that just played a perfect game. So they can miss a weak side rotation, they can miss a couple shots, have a bad turnover. But in practice, I'm always looking for the players that's going to respond as opposed to react. You know, you get the kids that maybe have a turnover and they put their head down and now there's a trickle-down effect where they're going to spiral out of control and they're going to continuously make mistakes. I don't feel comfortable with playing players that react. And so for me to be able to trust you, it goes back to your practice. right? How are you practicing? What your habits look like? Can I trust you to respond when you do make that mistake in the game? Because, you know, every coach, I don't care what level it is, middle school, high school, college, NBA, you trying to win. You know what I mean? I don't really know anybody that's comfortable or cool with like just losing. You know what I mean? So you do have a lot of a pride and ego that goes into this as a coach. But if you're a player and you're not getting minutes, you have to figure out, okay, am I responding when I make mistakes? What's my body language look like? Do I, like when coach subs you into the game, do you look nervous? Because as a coach, if we down 5 points and let's say I say, hey, get in there, and you kind of like just you damn near shaking, I don't trust that you're going to make the best decisions for us as a team to go out there and help us win. So, you know, for you young guys, again, practicing the art of responding as opposed to reacting in practice, diving for the loose balls, doing all the little things that the coaches are asking you, that's going to only continue to build the trust over time, and that's how you're going to lead into getting more minutes.
Maybe good question. And pick me maximum 3 key points that you want to work on for the summer. And I do the same thing. And then we bring it together. And then, for example, I will tell you one thing, like this year I had a big guy was playing in the EuroLeague, and he said the number one thing he wanted to work on is ball handling for the summer. And I'm like, why you want to do that? Yeah, because I'm not good at it. Yeah, but what's your role on the team? Like, you literally don't dribble the ball during the game, maximum 1 dribble to after a roll and go up. So that makes no sense. So I think it's kind of like a discussion, and then you come up with a plan up front that you both agree. Best case, even if you get a third party, and that would be the coach or the manager or maybe the agent. So you have three people giving their opinion. And then once you get a plan, I think that's the best way to do it. Because now you want to be as efficient with your time as possible. So everything you do during the practice should be to improve that player. I think that's it for private sessions. I think with teams also it's kind of like clarity on what are the goals, what are you working on. I always tell up front, like, all right, this is going to be the topic of the day, this is what I expect. And if there's clarity, I think it's easy to buy in. It's more like when you're not getting buy-in, it's like if you feel like, what is he doing? Like, am I really getting better? If the player doesn't trust you or is not clear on what are the intentions, then I think you start to lose a player.
Yeah, I think preparation is the main thing, and being very prepared and having clarity of why you're doing what you're doing. And really, I mean, first buying into yourself and again, preparing and doing the necessary prerequisites in terms of research on what it is that you're working on. Because you have to be able to be extremely confident in yourself, because players can feel that, right? Players can feel when you're not confident in yourself, when we've all been there. And being able to explain to them very simply, especially when you're dealing with small-sided games and that kind of thing, why are they doing what they're doing? And then when they can see that, pretty much everything takes care of itself in terms of buy-in. Did I answer the question? Like,
yeah, I mean, pretty much I just want to know you guys' stories, like how you guys like start getting more roles in yourself.
Can I say one or two?
You know, when it comes to setting the tone with your athletes, you lead by example. So they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's literally helping them understand, when I'm yelling at you, I believe in you. I want you to do this because I want you to reach your full potential. And so it's investing in them, and when they understand that you're all in for them, they're gonna buy in. And then also from an operations standpoint, and it's something we're gonna add in our academies more, it's organizing their development plan, like you mentioned, and it's like helping them have their vision and their goals, and then setting up their daily habits. And then when they start seeing results, they're buying into everything you want to do. Why? Because they know you care, they know you can guide them on their path, and they know that they can trust you reach their full potential. You have an amazing resume, right? You're a professional basketball player, you've got all the tools. If they understand how much you care and you communicate that every single day, they're going to trust you even more, 10 times more. Let's take one last question. Yes. It's okay. Can you repeat that?
So what do you think about the saying, don't compare your stage 1 with someone else's
You guys want to answer that? You want me to take that? Yeah, I'll take that. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. All three of these unbelievable trainers at a way higher level than me. I'm not trying to do a comparison game. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to learn from them and gather the data from them. And they've been an unbelievable resource. And so instead of focusing on a comparison game, why don't you focus on, how can I deliver value? How can I learn from them? To me, like, it's breaking the whole competition mindset. I don't see competition. It's even in the training industry in New York City. We were discussing this yesterday. This is the most dense basketball city in the world. I did a study where there's 1 million basketball players, 10,000 coaches. You could fill 3,666 training academies with 60 athletes. Why is there competition? And to me, it's just breaking the competition mindset and focusing on a collaboration mindset. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the comparison game. At least for us trainers, it's delivering value. And then for you as an athlete, it's about your full potential, right? And so just something to think about there. Not always focusing on just the comparison game. Let's take this one final question.
I think the first thing is to always have an upfront, transparent conversation of what is expected. That's very, very important to set the groundwork for everything that's going to come after that. And then if it is that you see something that's going wrong, there's a great book, another great book called Crucial Conversations, where they show that the lag time of not addressing something, the longer you wait, the worse that problem gets. Now, I'm not saying that if I see someone over there falling asleep and I feel like I need to address that, I may not address it in front of everybody and humiliate them right there. That's like a different thing, right? So I think that it's very important to go have that conversation and to say, I'm coming at you with a place of love, safety, and care. And it needs to be genuine. That needs to be genuine. And to have a conversation with them, say, you're better than this, and I'm holding you to this standard, but you're falling short of the standard. So do you see how I'm actually coming from a place of care and a place of friendship where you're falling short and I'm holding you. You should be here, but you're right here right now. And then you might get backlash and everything, but the first part of it is the book talks about when emotions get high, motives change. When emotions get high, the motives change. Whereas if he gives me backlash and I'm defensive about the whole situation, then all of a sudden I'm probably trying to get some sort of revenge and retaliation, and then the whole conversation goes out the window. But if I'm going in there feeling like, I want to come out of here with a better relationship than when we first started, right? And there's only one way to really do that, and is to come from a place of change and care, and then they can see that you're actually coming from that place, then they're going to be a lot more receptive to what you say than if I'm just coming at you just straight up and very, very bluntly. I found that to be very beneficial.
I think that's something I'm still also learning. For me, I'm huge on holding people accountable. I put the standard for myself in here, so I expect the other guys definitely in my academy to follow that standard. So for me, I'm huge on honesty. So that means if it's shit, it's shit. I'm gonna tell you that it's shit. But when you're doing something great, I'm also the first one to tell you that it's great, So for me, I need to learn maybe a little bit more Will-His approach, because sometimes I let kids cry, because I'm totally honest with them. But we still have that relationship because they know that I truly care about them. And some kids, it's a little bit like you need to know your personnel. I always say this, tough love or real love. Some kids need real love, and they need it hey man, you can do better. And some kids, you just need to be brutally honest and just, that works for them. So you need to learn a little bit everybody's different, what do they need, and how can I help them the most to get the most out of them, and help them reach their potential. To build on it, for me, the people always not full seat, their expectations are the ones who talk the most. Hey coach, I want to do this. Hey coach, I'm going to do that. Hey coach, I want to be in the national team this summer. The kids who constantly talk like that most of the time are the ones who don't put in the work. And the kids who are silent and just working out without putting it on social media or having everybody let them know that that they did an extra workout, those are the ones who make it. The ones who truly love the game are the ones who pick up the ball when there's no one around, when there's no coach. And those, for me, I always look more at those kids than the ones who talk about what they want or going to do in life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, one thing I've learned over and over again, we talked about this yesterday about finding 10,000 ways to say the same thing, right? It's just the power of why. You know, so for me, if I'm working with any type of player, it's more so of how can I guide them to figure out the answer, right? Because having the power of conversations too, for me, it leads into asking more questions. So if we set a goal before the season and they're not getting the results that we discussed, I'm just say, hey, why do you think you're not playing so well? Just so I could extract feedback, you know, or get the feedback that I need to be able to tailor the conversation and get them to understand what I need them to hear what I'm saying and to really think about what I'm saying. And then if the results are good, it's the same thing. Why do you think you're having success in these particular situations? Just so we're always aligned, but I feel like if I can empower them to feel like they have a say in their process and their own personal development, and pretty much give them the power to feel like they're in control of certain outcomes, usually when it's a negative outcome, something that they don't want, I try to give them new perspective. Well, did you ever think about what if you did it like this? What if you did it like that? And, you know, we could tweak some things in between for them to get different results. So I think just asking your players why, you know, you had success or why do you think you're struggling allows the player to start thinking outside the box a little bit differently. And now you guys can have that honest, open discussion without, you know, both of you guys just trying to be bulldogs, trying to get your point across. So.
I really love this conversation. One 2 cents here too is like creating an environment that's filled with faith, love, joy, accountability, and respect. And it's making sure that you follow that 80-20 rule, where it's 80% positive, and then there you could have that 20% negative you could be on them. So that means you're gonna say positive, 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 then you could have a negative. And it's always keeping in perspective the athlete that I want the best for you. I can't even tell you how many times like I'll explain to a kid that like you see their energy, they'll drop when you yell at them, and it's like, I'm someone that's trying to help you reach your full potential. I'm not trying to put you down. I want to lift you up. And that's what we do as parents, trainers, and coaches. We're not putting people down. We're helping them raise them up through that tough love. But unbelievable conversation, guys. Let's give them a round of applause, please.